Recording in progress.
Good morning, colleagues, and good morning to everybody in the meeting. The time is exactly 9 o'clock, the scheduled time for our meeting. Just want to welcome all of you to the meeting of the Portfolio Committee on Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. Ms. Moy, can we quickly get to it? Do we have any apologies?
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members. Chairperson, yes, I received 4 apologies. One from Honorable Zungula, he's attending another meeting. And another one from Honorable Minister Ntsabeni, she's attending the ministerial press briefing. And the third one from Honorable Deputy Minister Pinky Kekana, she's attending the President's DPME in Free State. The last one, Chairperson, the Honorable Minister Namahopa and the DG will be with us until 11 o'clock. At 11, they have a meeting with the AG. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ms. Moy, for those apologies. Colleagues, those are the apologies we have for the meeting. We're certainly going to be starting with you, Minister, so by that time we're planning to have been done with your presentation. It's important that the Auditor General get an audience around their task with yourself, so we would not want to stand in the way of your meeting there. Those are the apologies that we have with one member of our committee who has sent an apology as well. Any comments on those, Honorable Mani?
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members and everyone. I'm just raising up, Chair, to say I'm also triple booked today, so I'll be in and out. I've got this committee, I've got SCOF, I've got plenary, I've got all of these things all at the same time. So I'll be in and out, just so it's noted.
And that is not abuse. Thank you, Honorable Mani. Thank you. Let's proceed then to the next item. We note that apology. We have 2 items that we want to attend to today. Is the presentation in updating us on the monitoring of the performance of the economic recovery program, as well as the second item, the brand SA. As the agenda indicates, we'll start with the Minister of DPME, who will lead her team to share with us their work of monitoring that important task. I therefore want to take this opportunity to welcome Honorable Minister Marupini Ramohupa to make your own opening remarks and conduct your orchestra with your team on the presentation. I'll start with you. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me take this opportunity, of course, to greet you as the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, to greet all honorable members, to greet also my colleagues, Deputy Ministers, as well as the Director General and the officials from both DPME and Presidency and Parliament, of course. If you may allow me, Chairperson, may I request that I switch off my camera? As you know, it will be problematic. Thank you. I'm actually excited that we are coming today to give an assessment that we have made, which is an evaluation on the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. As you are aware, and I think almost everyone is aware, of course, this plan was introduced in October 2020 as a policy that was meant to speak to the issues of economic recovery following the global social economic slowdown that was induced by COVID-19, the pandemic that happened for almost 3 years. This evaluation was initiated, of course, and completed at the request of our cabinet, and we have assessed the design and the implementation aspects of the ERRP. We have also been able to track progress and made key observation in terms of the targets that were put in place, and we have also been able to make recommendation in areas that requires improvement. The results, of course, of this evaluation, we've been able to present it to different streams in a form of committees of cabinet, and some of them, of course, is the economic one and the infrastructure one, as well as all the other clusters that deals with development. Honorable Chairperson, this evaluation reveals that phase 1 of the ERRP, as you are all aware maybe, that the policy have got 3 phases that are mainly dealing with issues of health, the other one with economy and infrastructure, and the other one with inclusivity in terms of the economy itself. In this evaluation, we've been able to realize that phase 1 of the ERRP has been implemented effectively in our view, and the intended results were achieved. As you are all aware, South Africa has been able to cap the spread and devastation of COVID-19 pandemic because we have implemented measures that were able to save lives and livelihood. Maybe not at the rate at which we would have wanted to, but comparatively speaking, when you compare South Africa and how it responded to COVID-19 with developed world such as UK, for example, you would then now say that we have done even better than they've been able to the point that we've been able to even sequence some of this variants of COVID-19 ourselves as South Africa, and the world then followed us after that. Furthermore, the implementation of phase 2 and phase 3 intervention is also still underway. We are just concerned, of course, that phase 3 is not moving at the rate that we would have wanted it to move, but at least the interventions that we believe needs to be there are still underway. The committee will note in the presentation that there are specific areas of success as the presidential employment stimulus, exports, and tourism as well. Equally, the evaluation do highlight areas that are still experiencing serious challenges. As I've already said, that in terms of phase 3, we're not necessarily doing as good and perfect as we would have wanted it to be. Notably, the economy has recovered to its pre-COVID level during Q1 of 2022. However, there are economic sectors that are yet to recover. Key economic indicators such as employment, investment are also yet to recover. And we do believe that with the interventions that we'll be discussing here today, we will definitely see improvement so that we can then now be able to speak to the recovery plan that is supposed to make our country a better country to live in. Let me take this opportunity, Chairperson, and request you to allow me to request the Director General of our department, who's leading the team, of Deputy Director Generals, and the presenter, of course, will be Godfrey Mashamba. But I do believe that it is prudent that the DG do say something before Dr. Mashamba do speak on this matter. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Just as we go to your team to make presentation, to just indicate to them you have given the nature and the extent of the presentation. You have about 30 minutes for your presentation. Please go ahead, DG and Mr. Mashamba.
Okay. Good morning, Chair, Minister, members, and colleagues from the two departments. Thanks once again for giving us this opportunity to present on this important matter of the economic recovery. Chair, based on what has already been said, I just want to make one point that I think is very important. That when the ERRP was introduced, it does not stop other interventions that were supposed to be implemented, but this was a fast track, an identification of those key issues that were catalytic. So much so that at the same time, we advise departments that whilst implementing the ERRP, we must also take into consideration other interdependencies, because once we don't take into consideration such interdependencies as we'll highlight here, that was always going to slow the implementation of the ERRP. And we'll give some of the examples that are very important. Lastly, we have worked with the cluster on this area. Initially, the cluster wanted to create its own internal mechanism for monitoring and evaluation so that we have a two-layered approach. We initially agreed, albeit reluctantly, that that happens, but we then relented and said, if they are able to do their own in-house monitoring and evaluation, which will then supplement the work that we do, that was fine and well. But along the way, it became evident, Chair, that the cluster was not in a position to do what it had committed to do, such that DPME had to take over and be the overall assurance provider in the implementation of the ERRP, and that resulted in this evaluation. Now, having said that, Chair, I'll ask to request DDG Godfrey Mashamba to present within the allocated time, and together with the other DDGs, we will assist with the questions. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Greetings and good morning, Chair and honorable members, and thanks to the Minister and the DG for the opening remarks. I'm trying to access the screen. If I can be allowed to project on the screen. Unless if the Secretariat is going to assist with that. Is the Secretariat going to project for me?
Yeah, just as a matter of practice in this committee going forward, I've raised it last week. I prefer that 5 minutes before we start, you do that exercise. Whoever is going to present does that, so that when we start our meeting, I don't have to wait for a minute or two for sharing of screens and all of that. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that guidance. I see the presentation is on the screen. Thank you. The purpose of the presentation is to brief the Portfolio Committee on the evaluation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. The presentation really is a summary of all the work that has been done, congested into a concise presentation to brief the committee. It covers some background, methodology, key findings and lessons, and the evaluation recommendations. If we can go to the next slide. The next slide essentially repeats what the Honorable Minister has indicated as background, giving rise to the introduction of the Economic Recovery Plan. To put meat into that, during 2020, the COVID-19 induced lockdown resulted in the economy contracting by 6.3%, 2 million jobs lost. Many South Africans lost their livelihood. And at that time, in the build up to 2020, honorable members will recall that the economy was also on a slowdown. The economic was stagnant, and it put a lot of strain in the trajectory of 2030 goals of the National Development Plan of creating employment, reducing inequality and poverty. So the ERRP consisted of those three interacting phases that are reflected on the screen, a range of priority interventions, as well as the structural reforms meant to unlock the growth constraint. Amongst these interventions, a massive rollout of infrastructure, targeting about 100 billion rand over 10 years of infrastructure. Industrial master plans implemented, localization and exports, the energy security issue. Members will note the energy action plan that is being implemented, tourism recovery, issues around economic inclusion, interventions for the green economy, the employment stimulus, presidential employment stimulus, with a range of interventions, sub-interventions under it, as well as agricultural and food security, and a range of macroeconomic interventions that were implemented, cutting across the fiscal space and also the monetary policy space. Next slide, please. And then in the next slide, we'll learn that DPME, following the request by the EC cluster and the Cabinet Lekgotla of September 2022, undertook a rapid evaluation together with the Development Bank of Southern Africa and also the National Planning Commission to assess the design and implementation aspects of the economic recovery plan. So that was meant to look into the design principles, how well the implementation is actually happening, how things are organized to effect implementation, how the monitoring and evaluation aspects are actually working. So most of those things are dealt with in the rest of the presentation, amongst which to quantify what would be the envisaged outcome, to review quality of implementability of the plan, bottlenecks, quick wins, gaps that then can inform improvements as the program is getting implemented. Next slide, please. In this slide, the rapid evaluation is the approach that was followed. This was based on the fact that there was limited time appropriated for this work, but also very limited resources. And what was done was a desktop analysis of originating documents of the ERRP, its supporting plans, as well as key informant interviews that sampled a number of people that were involved in the conceptualization of the ERRP, those that are involved in parts of implementation, are doing research in this space, people that are knowledgeable about the subject matter across government, labor, business, and academic sector, so that we get their views around this process. And following that, a report was developed and then shared in a number of platforms. And the report that the committee has in front of it is captures both the outcome of what was the findings of the evaluation, as well as a number of issues that surfaced during the engagements in those processes. Next slide, please. And at the point where we are is that while the report has been developed, the EC cluster needs to use it to develop an improvement plan, which will then say, how are these recommendations going to actually be implemented in order to effect the required, the desired outcomes? In terms of limitation, I've already mentioned that limited time, limited resources. Also, in this presentation or report, we were not doing an impact evaluation. So other than that, we are suggesting that an impact evaluation will be necessary down the line, but to do that will require careful design and a focus on specific intervention areas and use of appropriate methodology to do that. So as we talk about this, we haven't really done an impact evaluation as it required. But beyond that, there are specific areas that we suggest as part of the recommendations that will require detailed evaluation. Also, the scope here was limited in a sense that it did not do what we call expenditure review, which can then link the budget's allocations, the prioritization government, as well as how the money flows into specific interventions and how they were used. That is also a critical gap that need to be noted. Next slide, please. In summary here, the economy has recovered to pre-2020 levels, but is still performing below what would be the policy target. So there is still a lot that need to be done to get to where we want. The growth at the moment is not sufficient to offset some of the socioeconomic challenges we have. The economic recovery, we consider it in these findings that it's still fragile in a sense that it's uneven across sectors, and also it lacks what we call international comparators. So there's still a lot to be done. We need to have more concerted effort to implement faster and also to go towards to strengthen the resilience of the economy. Again, performing below the MTSF target of 2 to 3%, and also the longer term target of the NDP, which is an average of 5.4%. Aggregation of a range of other key macroeconomic indicators reflect that fragility at the moment. Employment is almost there, 100,000 jobs below what would be the pre-COVID levels still. So there is a way to go in that space. And then in terms of phase one, most of the things have been done. The economy has been reopened. The curbing of pandemic done very well, but partially achieved is phase two, where implementation is ongoing with successes in certain places, but also challenges in other areas. What we want to highlight here as the key challenges and risks are the issue of energy security. Load shedding has actually caused a whole lot of challenges in terms of implementation, not only by disrupting ongoing business activities, but also affecting the psychology of investors in terms of confidence and all that. The logistics sector is also one big constraint affecting productivity across sectors. Equally with the energy challenges, the issue of crime affects confidence. I will see in later the fiscal constraints. It's a challenge in the sense that it hampers, even where we have noted successes in implementation. Certain programs can be scaled up just because of the limitations of budgets and budget cuts, but also not only the budget, but also the capacity to actually implement, because budgets affect also how a government can allocate capacity, as well as the coordination which comes through in the way we present the recommendations. Next slide, please. Having interviewed the key informants, what comes out as, next slide, please. Having implemented the interventions, having interviewed the key informants, what we gathered was that the general view that economic problems in 2020 and pre-2020 justify the introduction of the ERRP, and key interventions were found to be appropriate, that the right kind of priorities have been identified and are being implemented. And what followed through was that there was a series of plans, master plans, energy action plan, and you name them, JIP, a number of programs that were pronounced after, which are found to be the right ones in order to intervene in the economy going forward. However, the changing context present new problems that require attention and also opportunities that need to be chased. In this slide, we summarize what would be the findings, the design aspects. There are certain weaknesses that we think necessitate the review of the ERP main documents and supporting documents. The implementation arrangement, there's need for better coordination from national, provincial level, state enterprises, and how government interacts with private sector. On the monitoring and evaluation, we need to tighten on the existing measures. There are existing measures. For example, DPME has led a process. Upon the announcement of the ERP, DPME revised the MTSF to integrate these ERP interventions into. But there is need to strengthen the outcome indicators in certain areas, to get these indicators and outcome measures to be integrated fully into plans of government and entities. Then the DPME on the other side uses the biannual report mechanism under priority 2, which deals with the economy, to monitor the interventions in the ERP. But then there's a very big room for improvement in that space. Then next slide, please. Next slide. Here, I won't repeat what we have said, but to then add and say, while the recovery was happening and signs of implementation was actually taking place, there were disruptions that actually took place. The 2022 flood disaster, the unrest in 2022 July, Transnet strike, those caused a lot of disruption in the trajectory, as well as the global environment, which affects South Africa through the global supply chains. It affects the country. So we need to do a little bit more in this space. And then the crime issue was also one of the big concerns in terms of disruption of construction sites and all that. Next slide, please. I will skip this slide and the next one. The next one just paints a picture of the work done by the Competition Commission, that out of the work that Competition Commission has been doing, there's a range of recommendations that are coming out of that process, which need to be incorporated or integrated into the cluster's program of work to promote inclusion, because many of the key sectors in the economy are very concentrated. Let's go to recommendations. Recommendation number 1, in the next slide, please. In recommendation number 1, the recommendation is that there must be an immediate enhancement to the ERP design and implementation. The key question in that recommendation is that whether ERP should be continued.
Is that the next slide you wanted?
No.
Can the slide move, please, whoever is moving it?
Whether ERP should be continued. Next slide, you went backward. Whether ERP should be continued, and if continued, in what form. The answer that this evaluation is putting forward is that yes, it should be, considering the aggregation of all the factors that we have considered. ERP can be a mechanism, a coordinating mechanism across government on the interventions into the economy. At least that should be continued until recovery is fully established. And in doing so, specific enhancements must be introduced immediately in order to address the weaknesses that we have identified in this evaluation. First bullet point confirms that some of the existing interventions are the right ones. We just need to strengthen implementation, faster implementation, more effective implementation, coordination, an ejection plan, efficiency in the freight logistics that need to be accelerated, fighting economic crimes, public infrastructure delivery and maintenance. These are priorities that we think need to stay, but also incorporate what we call new growth opportunities, namely the space of oil and gas, opportunities for green hydrogen, beneficiation of strategic minerals, as well as the digital economy. We need to scale up in those spaces and open up new opportunities for growth in the economy and jobs. To establish measurable targets in all the areas that have been identified to be lacking, to implement competition reforms as in key industries as recommended by the Competition Commission, to find a better coordination between provincial level interventions with what is actually happening at the national level in order to optimize, to review assignment of implementation responsibilities across departments and their state-owned entities, and also lastly, to allocate resources for ERRP program management, like in a program management kind of office, and then to also enhance the information system and establish what we'll call a public-facing dashboard that updates public about what is actually taking place. Next slide. In the next slide, to improve M&E mechanism, there is a specific recommendations that we have made available in that regard to improve M&E. And then I'll spend a bit of time on number 3, to strengthen coordination to resolve the most critical challenges that we need to solve the big problems by strengthening institutional arrangement, retain the EC cluster's role as a coordinator of ERRP implementation, but also do the following: find ways to facilitate intercluster engagement in order to establish a coordinated approach on matters that hamper economic recovery and business confidence. In this area, we have recommended to the economic cluster that immediately a coordinated mechanism between the justice, crime, prevention and security, and also the ICTS cluster around these issues. The crime and violence, vandalism of infrastructure, illicit, we need to show that these areas are being disrupted. These problems are disrupted at a serious level. The counterfeit goods included in that space. The mechanism to attract international partners, ways to fast-track regulatory changes and reducing red tape, and continuous monitoring of what would be the social implications of ERRP interventions, as well as continuation of the government high-level engagement with the private sector. But these need to be redirected towards dealing with this and resolving the most critical challenges affecting investment and recovery. In this space also, there are some good practices that government has learned from some of the mechanisms for coordinating, especially around the Energy Action Plan, the lessons from Operation Vulindlela, lessons from Pakisa, Operation Pakisa, and the NAT joints, that of pulling expertise from across sectors, of joint problem solving and troubleshooting that can be brought into this space to enhance the implementation. Next slide, please. In the next slide, we'll look at priority key recommendation number 4, where we are recommending that specific areas need to be prioritized for in-depth evaluation in order to enhance adaptive improvements in the process. One of it is the gap that we've identified of expenditure review in order to assess budget allocation and spending on all interventions linking to results. To also look into the industrial policy master plan implementation progress and how they support recovery process, as well as reflections on the impact of structural changes that are being implemented in terms of their potential implications to growth and competitiveness. And then lastly, recommendation 5, which says, looking forward in the next planning cycle, all the phase 2 and phase 3 ERRP interventions, which are still ongoing, must be integrated into the medium-term strategic planning framework up to 2029, looking at 2030 as well as the target for the NDP. And in doing so, immediate priority in terms of clarifying and being more specific and explicit about outcomes target indicators on the industrial master plans and the infrastructure development for the next 3 to 5 years. The last slide is concluding. In the last slide, I would say here that in terms of the national evaluation policy framework, the EC cluster has been presented with recommendation, and which has been recommended also by Cabinet that it must develop an improvement plan, which then says how are the recommendations going to be implemented. But while the economic cluster is doing that, DPME has offered to support that process by guiding the EC cluster in the development of that improvement plan, because DPME has tools to do that, to also support the cluster in commissioning the expenditure review that we have highlighted in the study, and also the development or strengthening of the performance information dashboards to strengthen M&E and reporting, as well as to facilitate the integration of ERRP phase 2 and 3 interventions in the planning and budgeting system. Then we are recommending here the portfolio committee to note the findings and recommendation from the evaluation of the ERRP. Thank you very much. There is a set of slides that are in the annexure, which are provide graphs and tables as additional information for noting by the committee. With that, thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and back to you, Honorable Minister. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, if I can conclude on this. Now, in terms of phase 3, that was referred to as a underachieve or non-achievement, we need to indicate that there is a process that then ensued, led by the President, which entailed the President entering into agreements with all the ministers. So you will find that most of the issues that were supposed to be undertaken in that phase are now forming the core of the agreements that the President has entered into with the ministers. And we are supporting that process in ensuring that there is a fast track. So maybe at some point and in anticipation, we can have a dedicated discussion or even a presentation on those issues, just to appreciate that the issues raised in this evaluation have not fallen through the cracks. They are being followed up by ourselves and also by the President as part of evaluating the performance of the executive. But we did not include those details, but if required, Chair, we will have to do that so that it completes this process and assure Parliament that indeed everything is being done to ensure that the outstanding issues are attended to. But some of the issues will detail as we respond to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. I'm now going to invite members to interact. Thank you for also, Mr. Mashamba, staying within your time. That was efficient. Keep it that way. Members, may I invite you to interact with this, Honorable Pillay, followed by Honorable Meglu, in that order. Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and let me greet all members on the platform and all stakeholders. Firstly, let me note the presentation and appreciate all of the inputs that we have received. Chairperson, the first one I want to ask is, does the PEP program, the Presidential Empowerment Program, form part of this recovery plan? And if so, what is the status of it? Then what measures exist for monitoring and evaluating private sector investment as per the ERRP? How are industry indicators monitored to assess the impact of the various interventions of the ERRP? And from the evaluation evaluation findings on the limitations caused by a concentrated economy, what interventions are required to advance structural intervention as part of the recovery plan? And Chair, the last one on that is, well, okay, second last one. Load shedding has destroyed small businesses, and that coupled with COVID lockdown, etc. Is there a plan to support small businesses in terms of either solar or alternate methods of energy so that they are able to reduce the downtime in terms of production? Because a lot of them had to close shop as a result of this. And then, Chair, the last one, there has been a sudden rise of delay in projects, which has resulted to construction mafias, or it is linked to construction mafias. What is government's plan to deal with them? Because you find that in some cases, departments and municipalities have actually interdicted them. But we have to, as government, find a mechanism to deal with this phenomenon of construction mafias that are causing major delays in projects that we would see completed long ago. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Pillay, for your contribution. Honorable Maglu.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. I hope you will allow me also to switch off my video due to my signal.
Sure,
Chairperson, I also want to say thank you for the I also want to say thank you for the presentation. Rightfully, both the minister and Mr. Mashamba have mentioned the crime effects and also the effect that COVID-19 and the impact. My biggest problem that I'm facing now in terms of what has been said pertaining to the role of DPME, that they have to play with particular reference and in line with what Honorable Pillay has said, in particular fighting
Honorable Maglu, can you just reposition yourself? You are cutting.
crime.
Just reposition yourself where you are. You are cutting.
Now, I think if you measure these up and you take, can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, I can
Chair,
hear
can
you
you hear me now?
Yes, there's also a delay from you. I can hear you now. Please go
Chair,
ahead.
Can I come in
Hello?
later? I just want.
Okay, that's fine. We'll get you back. Honorable Mani.
Thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, let me welcome the presentations. I think it was a very elaborate presentation. I just have two questions, Chairperson. The one is that I would have asked what is going to be done, having said all of this, but the recommendations were very clear as to what needs to happen. The only issue around the recommendations is that there are no timelines. So the first question is that, can the minister provide a detailed timeline and milestones for those recommendations to be implemented, just so we know where we stand, so that also from an APP point of view, we're able to track. So can we get that? That's the first thing. Secondly, what measures does the minister have to propose, minister have to enhance the coordination and collaboration to ensure the effective implementation of the ERRP? Because we know that it's not the department itself that does this, but it's others. So what exactly, how is this coordination going to happen? Those are the two for me, Chairperson. And Mashoma space. Hi, thank you. Cheers. Bye. Cheers. Sorry, I left to duck off to the other one in midstream, but I'll be here until 10.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Manyi, for your contribution. Honorable Maglu, are you back? Still struggling? Honorable Piri?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to yourself and Minister or the executive in the platform, as well as the delegation and colleagues. Good morning. I'm just gonna have a bit of a noise. Bear with me. I'm in the park. They're busy cleaning the movement. Sorry for that. But Chair, I just wanna do some few recommendation. Mine, it's not questions, but I want to make a recommendation to the presentation. One, I'll start with strategies for deconcentrating the economy, focus on the increasing the share of small and medium-sized business in the economic sector are very critical, Chair. Secondly, the financial sector transformation to increase access to finance is critical for the small, medium enterprises development as well. Chair, the economic reform of SOEs should have long-term planning of the state participation in the sector. Fiscal policy and monetary policy coordination to support the ERRP is very critical to finance interventions in the public and private sector. On the design and implementation, private investment should be measured and evaluated to identify areas of market inefficiencies. The second last is that the enhancement of M&E and learning should include the private sector. And the last one, Chair, state participation areas of new targets opportunities are very critical for crowding in private investment. SOE review should consider establishing entities and repurposing others to create opportunity in target new growth opportunities. Namely, we speak of oil, gas, green hydrogen, beneficiations of strategic minerals, and the digital economy. Those are my submission in terms of recommendation. They are not questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Piri. That's very helpful. And so we're noting that set of recommendations as well. Honorable Maglu?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I believe and hope I will be audible, and also the DPME
you're audible. You're audible now.
And DPME will respond to the load shedding issues. Chairperson, the Minister, as well as Mr. Mashamba, have put emphasis on crime. As well as both start with the issue of COVID-19 and the effects and impact that COVID-19 have had on society. Yes, of course, we are all sympathetic to that. A week or two ago, Minister Gordon in Parliament have made a daring statement saying that if it was not for the government, the effects of COVID-19 should have been worse. What is actually forgotten to mention is that throughout this process, this country has lost 500 billion rand through COVID. Now here comes a report, and it speaks to how we're going to address fighting economic crimes that comes in various forms. There's a range of offenses when it comes to this, as far as money laundering, corruption, intellectual property crime, environmental crime, and all of that. And we've been told now that the DPME is the right vehicle, it's the right mechanism to deal with the recovery of this. My problem is, I understand and accept the explanation of the role that has been played in terms of all of these, but I think the the economic crime and the corruption and the misuse of public power for private benefit has an enormous impact on society. And it is very difficult. It's, how are we going to address, and at what stage, when, where are we going to receive explanations of the recovery of such things? Even the deputy president have come out very clear on this issue yesterday in Parliament, and the provinces that he have visited. But here in the Northwest Province, there is reports about the 30 million rand by the Vryburg municipality for a 38 million rand check. So I think that is what we are interested in. How are we going to deal with this on a regional level, on a national level, and even on an international level when it comes to money laundering? So, and perhaps maybe if DPME can also take us through the improvement of data collection when it comes to economic and financial crime under this particular issue, because I think the big issue of what is presented here today is how we are going to deal with it. As we've been successful, are we happy that we were able to retrieve all of those via all of these crimes? So we have to also put a particular emphasis on whether we have the advanced technology providing opportunities for this department to deal with criminal activity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Maglu, for your contribution. I think that was the last hand from the members. I'm now going to ask Minister's team of DG, Mr. Mashamba, and anybody else, and then the Minister will come in last in responses.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I will deal with a couple of issues and then ask Dr. Grisel to respond on the future of planning and on how these recommendations will find expression in the work of government going even into the next administration. And of course, DDG Mashamba will deal with the specific questions related to the report. Now, Chair, on the PES presidential employment stimulus, we need to indicate that it was implemented successfully across the different areas. Of course, owing to budget, we could do so much, but what we are beginning to see is that some of the things that were incepted with the PES are continuing. So on the face of it, it may look like it was a once-off intervention, but we are seeing some continuity in certain areas of intervention. Then on the question on the monitoring of the role of the private sector, there are various mechanisms that have been set up to ensure that not only government report on the ERRP, but also the private sector should be doing a reporting. One is through the net-leg mechanism, which allows the private sector to report. And we need to say that based on our own assessment, this has not been that strong, in showing the extent to which the private sector is implementing the ERRP. And we've made a recommendation and linked this to the social compacting, that maybe what we need to do is to disaggregate social compacting into the specific key sectors of the economy, so that we can also, through that mechanism, enhance reporting. Presently, there is a work that is being done with a Business for South Africa, which focuses on energy, logistics, and crime prevention. And that mechanism allows for reporting by everyone because it's a common program that is being implemented as a case study of how best to social compact and collaborate between industry and government. So there is a detail in terms of that. DTI has set up an infrastructure called Investment South Africa. And through this mechanism also, we then are able to get data We also get data through the investment conference, particularly when it comes to the Black industrialists. A lot of information is generated through this mechanism, which is managed by the IDC and led by DTIC. So there are mechanisms that have been put in place to ensure that the private sector also comes to the party. We have observed, Chair, as I said just a little earlier, that we were at some point concerned about a situation whereby during the NEDLAC meetings, it was only government reporting on what it was doing and very limited reporting on the other side. And we brought this to the attention of the coordinating departments that it must be reciprocal and the industry must come to the party. On structural interventions that relate to the recommendations of the Competition Commission, which suggests that practically all sectors of the economy are characterized by one form or another in terms of concentration, barriers to entry for small businesses. There is a comprehensive mechanism that has been developed by the Department of Small Business Development. So there are two interventions that one can talk about in this area. One is the work of the Competition Commission itself in dealing with antitrust issues, but two is the work that has been done by the Department of Small Business Development to facilitate and interact with industry to reduce barriers to entry for SMMEs. So that information is also readily available. Then on the impact of load shedding, the Department of Small Business as of yesterday indicated that there is money that has been put together to support small businesses comprehensively, and that is led by CIFA. And the suggestion is that issues like this should form part of that package. So there is something that the small business development is dealing with. Now, the issue around construction mafia, the mafias are being dealt with in accordance with the law. So the only intervention that we know of at present, Chair, is what SAPS is reporting in terms of the arrests that are taking place, the prosecution that is taking place. So that is the only mechanism now. But if at all there are other opportunities or possibilities, we may have to look at that. But the main issue now is what the criminal justice system is doing. Now, quickly on what Honorable Madlua has said, that most of these issues that are being referred to when it comes to corruption arise or are known because of what a government does or what the state does, especially through the work of the Auditor General. As we said, even at the start of the meeting, that we are, some of us are connecting to you from the AGSA as it is now, because we see the work that the AGSA does as part of the integrated whole of the interventions of the state. So most of the issues come out of that process. But within the Presidency, we have established a robust mechanism to deal with the implementation of the SIU recommendations, because the implementation of the SIU recommendations can be divided into two parts. One is the part that is led by the prosecution, and as honorable members may be aware, a lot of money is being returned back because of the interventions of the SIU. So there is a robust system in that regard. And on the other side, within the public service, we realized that there was a slow implementation of the recommendations of the SIU, those that do not relate to prosecution, but require the public service to do certain things, including disciplinary cases. So we have set aside human resources, colleagues who do nothing on a daily basis, but focus on the implementation of the SIU recommendations. So this is work, and at some point we reported on this work to SCOPA and can share the same reports that we sent to SCOPA on the implementation of the SIU recommendations. Then on matters related to coordination, it is at our level, I would say that we have been concerned, Chair, about the functioning of the clusters, that clusters have not functioned as they should be and have not been dealing with strategic issues. So there is a report that DPME compiled, and that report was submitted to FOSAT for redress. Now, the clusters are currently, as it is, chaired by the delegated ministers. And one of the critical questions is whether the clusters should be continued to be led by the ministers, or the presidency should take over the work of the clusters and coordinate the clusters and set the agenda so that we can ensure that they are fully functional, because they are central to coordination. So that matter is ongoing. Our view is that something drastic is needed so that clusters are not just meeting to process cabinet memos, but they are also meeting to deal with issues that need to be attended to. Then on the milestones that have been referred to by Honorable Mangi, I will ask Dr. Grisel to speak to how this evaluation is going to be translated into the plan going forward, and also what aspects of the ERRP that are currently integrated into the plan. And then DDG Mashamba will then deal with his more specific issues, if any. And we take the recommendations that have been raised by Honorable Perry as a very important issues. As we indicated, although in passing last time, that we have been working with SOCs, whilst there is a big design to come up with a bill that deals with all SOCs, we have been doing our own part as a DPME to assist certain specific state-owned entities. So I'll ask Dr. Grisel first to speak, and then DDG Mashamba will then wrap up on the specific issues arising out of the presentation. Thank you.
May I come in?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll also put off my video if I may. Thank you very much. Just to respond to some of the issues that have been raised by the DG in particular, and Mr. Manyi and so on. So just a quick, what we have been emphasizing is that the effective implementation of the ERRP and the achievement of better results in the economy requires the integration of the ERRP across the entire planning and budgeting system. So that means at the level of the medium-term development plan, the current MTSF, the new medium-term development plan, the institutional plans, the APPs, and the strategic plans of departments, but right down also to the level of the district development model, because the implementation of the ERRP in many instances takes place within a local space. So the DDM1 plans, the IDPs, and so on, also importantly, do need to focus more on local economic development and optimizing the economic development opportunities. And we know also that this is very, very critical in terms of the investment levels. I think that in terms of the current medium-term strategic framework, priority 2 covers a lot of what is already also in the ERRP. So there's a large, high degree of alignment between the MTSF and the ERRP and the key areas of emphasis. When it comes to the institutional plans of the provincial and national departments, as well as the public entities, the ministerial circulars that have been issued to guide the development of the APPs has always included the issue of the ERRP. We also have done analysis of the alignment of the APPs with the ERRP. And for the 23-24 APPs, we actually found that 75%, we looked at 20 departments because not all departments are involved in the ERRP. 75% of those APPs were aligned to the ERRP, and 25% were partially aligned. So that shows that departments are taking it seriously. There are still issues with the use of results-based indicators and targets within the APPs, and this is something we are dealing with on an ongoing basis together with the AGSA. For example, departments would tend to say, instead of making a commitment on the number of jobs created, as an example, they would rather say one report on the number of jobs created. So that is something that we are dealing with. DPME also produces the annual budget prioritization framework, which is intended to then ensure that the policy priorities of government are indeed reflected in the budgeting system. The ERRP priorities have therefore also been integrated, including the issues of employment, the presidential employment stimulus that one of the honourable members raised, but also, of course, measures to improve employment creation within the private sector, the master plans, the energy issues, the logistics issues, the economic crimes, et cetera, et cetera. So those priorities, so that you then have coherence. In terms of the medium-term development plan for 2024 to 2029, as government, we have started the process of developing that plan, starting with the methodology, and we have done a critique of the possible weaknesses in the current methodology and approach that has been adopted. We have presented that to the FOSAD workshop in July, and it was largely accepted. We will be, the methodology is clear. The diagnostic would be critical, looking at the 30-year review and the which DPME is currently undertaking, but also the 10-year review of the NDP, which the National Planning Commission has developed. And then, of course, drawing on the lessons and the evidence with regard to what has worked and what has not worked in the current period. But very importantly also is the medium-term plan should be aligned with the various sector strategies that have already been developed and approved by Cabinet. The ERRP is a critical one in that regard, but there are also others, as the green hydrogen roadmap, the just transition framework, and many others. We're also looking at the issue of prioritization, but also the prioritization methodology, because everybody says we must prioritize, but we need to have a common prioritization methodology in terms of the impact that it would have on taking us towards our development goals, particularly poverty, inequality, and unemployment, but also ensuring that we impact on the lives of the majority of the people. Theory of change is always underpinning our approach, and then obviously the outcomes and the indicator sources, the baselines and the targets. So the ERRP will be important there, although the areas of new economic growth that perhaps are not adequately covered in the ERRP would also then come into the picture, including, as mentioned, the issue of the green hydrogen, the green economy, digitalization, modernization of the economy. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add 2 points. Thank you very much, colleagues. To respond, maybe to add what was said, the recommendations that Honorable Piri provided, we will note those down and then share with the EC cluster for consideration in the development of an improvement plan, because these recommendations that we are presenting here and then comments that we are receiving should actually contribute to that process. The next point, maybe respond directly to what Honorable Mani asked about the timeframes, that the improvement plan itself, the way it is designed, it requires that specific activities be identified and clear responsibility be assigned to what will happen or what will be done when, by who, including the timeframes and the dependencies. So that then becomes a response of the custodian of this program, which in this case is the EC cluster, as a tool that will ensure that the things that Dr. Grisel has mentioned here in terms of integrating of ERP into planning and budgeting systems will actually be done and given oversight at that level of the cluster. Thank you very much. I think those were the two comments to add.
Yeah, that concludes our responses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. May I now invite the Honorable Minister for
Thank you very much.
responses.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. And let me first just appreciate the recommendations that were given to us to better improve and enrich our own way of doing things, so that at least we could then now be able to make sure that whatever it is that we present or we evaluate can be measurable and can be able to be felt as an output more than as just an outcome. I think the team has really responded to a number of issues that one would have wanted to respond on, but safe to say, I must agree indeed that we definitely need to make sure that next time when we come to present, we should have at least 5 key priorities that we may then now know that at least members of the portfolio committee and the society at large can be able to see as something that is measurable. For example, the issue of the economic recovery plan. It's not only something that speaks to the policy itself, but as the DG, I think, also said, it also speaks to the coordination of all the master plans and policies that have been put in place to be able to speak to the economy. This one was based more on the recovery of what we have lost during the COVID. So some of the measurable targets that I think we will have to come and make sure that we report on is, for example, what DTI or IDC is actually doing in terms of the industrialization. They've put a new unit in place that is planning for development for industrialization, which speaks to certain targets that I do believe that are measurable. For example, if you speak about green hydrogen, and if you speak about green minerals and green energy, they have put in place a unit that now would be able to tell us how are we going to deal with the issues of, for example, the electric cars. Because when you talk about the electric cars, it's not only the automobile that you're talking about, but you're also talking about the component part of it. So that speaks to industrialization as it relates to this. So those are part of the things that I think we need to start saying when we come to present. We shouldn't just be broad, but we should then now be able to at least give you 5 targets that are measurable, so that at least then colleagues would then now know that at least what we're talking about is something that we see on the ground. Lastly, on the issue of security, I couldn't agree more indeed. The good part is that SAPS and defense are working together as it relates to dealing with the issues of construction mafias as well as the zamazamas. Because there is a strategy in place that and deployment that has already happened, we do believe that next time maybe we, as we assess, would also bring that as part of the 5 key strategy or key outputs that we would like to put in place, so that when we talk about targets and measurement, we talk about examples as well. Otherwise, I'm quite happy with what has been said, what has been asked, and the recommendation that has been given. But we will continue to make sure that we analyze and assess the ERRP, and just to say it, and I think Dr. Grizel also said it, we don't just do this because of what Cabinet has said. Even as we evaluate APPs of different departments, we also make sure that we check if they are complying with the ERRP itself, and also other issues such as gender, people with disability compliance. So we will continue to do this, of course, to make sure that as we continue to assess, we do it continuously to build up on the system that of monitoring and evaluation that would be strengthened for development and planning. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, and your team for the presentation and your responses to the questions. Maybe just by way of conclusion and summary, I note the department has taken note of all the issues, including the set of recommendations by Honorable Piri. Just for our committee staff, that you need to take note of all of those, because these are going to be part of our refurnished program. There are certain areas that would want to take up to influence our own program, in order for us to do an enhanced oversight. And that oversight might even target specific areas. It's not just oversighting on this department. We might have to dive in to specific challenged areas and call them as a committee and get answers to those issues. That's certainly our role. So it's going to be important that all of those issues are noted. It's clear that the economic recovery plan itself is in the works. It's under construction. We have not yet recovered in the way we want to be. And so that's also appreciated that there's focus on that recovery. We've not gotten to the next step. I think we've spoken a lot about the issue of strengthening coordination across. There would have been a concrete suggestion about specific support that must be given to small business who contribute a lot into the economy. We might take up that issue and zoom into those role players as the department on its side is doing the monitoring, evaluation, and the learning exercise. It's welcome that even today the security cluster was having a media briefing around how they are tackling this issue of illegal mining and issues of extortion. And so that's also going to be an interest as to whether there's progress in that regard, either through DPME or in certain areas where we directly zoom into that specific sector. So in future, as part of our program, we might call in even that entire cluster to in one room to give us answers on a number of these issues. And I'm saying therefore secretary must note some of those because they're likely to influence our program going forward. Otherwise, thank you very much, Minister. It's still not 11:30. Whenever you need to go, but we're going to appreciate as we go to Brand SA that even if you have to go, that you leave a few members of your team, because Brand SA is also an area that you also oversight as part of the mandate of your department. So I want to thank you for always availing yourself and leading your team, no matter what item we have on the agenda. And I can indicate to you next Friday, we're hoping to have a very short meeting where we know that the integrated planning bill is not in Parliament, it's between department and cabinet. We'd want you to come and tell us. This is not a committee that is going to get ready-made answers. Even as you are doing things in process, we want you to share with us where you are, what are the bottlenecks, why has this thing that you have inherited, which has been in the works for more than 10 years, where it is, And so we really appreciate your leadership. Thank you, Minister. We're now going to take off and proceed and get to the next item, which is the presentation by Brand SA, the repositioning of Brand SA. We received the apology of the Minister. We continue to miss the Minister in these meetings. If we never had a meeting with the Minister, hopefully we'll sort that out so that there's no designation that Deputy Ministers represent the Minister in the Portfolio Committee on an ongoing basis. And I make that point so that that gets to be attended to. With that said, as the apology indicated, I'm going to invite the Deputy Minister to lead the team to present on the repositioning of Brand SA. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Chair, I request to close my camera because I am attending one district development. I'm not in a good space of opening my camera. Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee on Planning, Monitoring, Evaluation, I present to you the Brand South Africa's presentation of the positioning of South Africa's nation brand internationally. Building a sustainable nation brand is possible and is achievable, like any strategy or project. It only succeeds when it involves the various parts of the country, from government to corporate and civic society stakeholders, as well as the ordinary citizens of the country. In an era of global challenges such as economic stagnation, geopolitics, high inflation, and energy crisis, amongst other issues, it remains imperative for countries to constantly review and intensify their strategies to be effective in an increasingly complex and challenged global landscape. This means that we constantly have to identify the competitive advantages for the purpose of attracting capital investment to support the sustainable socio-economic development of the nation brand. South Africa has merit of challenges and opportunities. Focus is often put on challenges, which often dilutes the power to harness opportunities and turn them into long-term victories. This by no means suggests that we should be oblivious to the realities of our challenges. We need to communicate interventions and strides and continue to be made in areas that are clipping the nation brand's ability to attract investment and take away from the work of positioning the South African nation brand as globally competitive. We know these areas that are hindering us from achieving our full potential, hence need to communicate interventions. This includes energy security, crime, and corruption. Brand South Africa has looked at key elements that can be utilized to elevate our international stature. The plan is to engage as many stakeholders as possible in how we all have a role to play in positively positioning South Africa and credible investment as a credible investment destination. Partnerships with like-minded stakeholders will be more imperative as we move towards the implementation of the positioning of South Africa internationally. The presentation detailed the positioning strategy enables me to look to the future of the nation brand with a sense of optimism, as I'm confident in the brand South Africa's team competence position the country as a preferred investment destination. The strategy has been infused with aspects of national importance that are geared towards economic recovery initiatives. Chairperson, I request, with me here, I'm with the Acting CEO of Brand SA. With your permission, I request to give the Acting CEO a permission to present to the Portfolio Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable DM. You have 20 to 30 minutes for the presentation. Please go ahead.
Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Honorable Minister, as well as honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, colleagues from the DPME, my name is Sithembile Ntombela, and I'm here with my other colleagues, the Corporate Service Director, Ms. Teleni, as well as Ms. Togo Motise, who is the Acting CMO. As the DM has given a preemption to my presentation, mine is to then profile and showcase how we are going to position South Africa's nation brand as a globally competitive brand in an era where everybody is fighting for a wallet or a share of wallet of the investors. If the chairperson allows me, I will then switch off my videos and proceed to do the presentation. This is a preamble of the areas that I will cover in this presentation. The environmental analysis, which is quite key as it informs our strategy in terms of the marketing strategy. We have to understand where we are. We also have to understand the state of the nation brand currently. Where are we winning? Where are we losing? Where are we weak? Then to come up with a marketing strategy that is informed, as well as campaign deliverables. From an environmental analysis, I will start with the context slide. Let me just close this. Okay. The context slide here, the key point to take out is that we are articulating our mandate, that of managing South Africa's nation brand reputation so as to improve its global competitiveness. And we do that through proactive and coordinated, and the key word being coordinated, because the winning formula is that propels us to work with stakeholders. We work with and through stakeholders in implementing this proactive and coordinated marketing, communication, and reputation studies. And often we ask ourselves, why do we continue to do this? It's purely because we believe in a vision that has been entrusted in us, a vision of creating a nation brand that inspires its people and is admired globally. So our model that we use is based on the framework that was developed by Simon Anholt, who is the guru and the founder of the nation brand theory in the 1990s. And this man simply came up with this methodology, which has been adopted by many scholars, as we see it in the literature review. It speaks to the pillars of the hexagon, such as tourism, governance, and culture, heritage, people, export, investment, and immigration. And his argument is that every state must have a nation brand agency. They must treat the state as if it's a brand and be able to influence how the world sees any country using those dimensions that I've mentioned. So essentially, if we master that, all we do as Brand South Africa, and our stakeholders also assist us to understand that everything we do is really about elevating our competitiveness and our international stature in these 6 pillars. So that is what, in a nutshell, this slide is talking about. As we look at the environmental analysis again, we look at the risks that have been flagged by the Institute of Risk Management. Not to go through everything, but there are risks that we're all aware of. Issues relating to governance, unemployment, the restoring of energy security, amongst others. And what is even more interesting is that we like to juxtapose things and compare one, report to the other. And for me, there's a lot of alignment when you look at the Ipsos study report, where they look at the common 5 concerns globally. So what worries the world? The same issues that the Institute of Risk Management is raising, those issues are also embedded in that Ipsos report, even including the WEF Global Risk Report that generally gets released every January. These are the common risks. They're not peculiar to South Africa, but they are citing that this is a challenge globally, and what we need to make sure is to ensure that we deal with these things that are crippling us. So how do we deal with these issues? Yes, this is just a synopsis. The main key point here is that we understand we are a nation that is dealing with these challenges, and we should not be oblivious to the fact that we do have energy crisis. We do have high levels of corruption. These are perceptions, by the way. We do have high crime rates. That is why the Gallup report rates us very low amongst other countries, such as your Mexico's and your Colombia, because that's what we have been perceived to be, whether it's through media or through the narrative. That is why we need, at the foundation of our strategy, we need to understand that as humans and as a country, this is what we need to fix, and communicate the interventions that are currently underway to deal with these disablers. Because it's no use to tell the world that there's crime and that we don't elevate enough the issues that are being put and the solutions that are being put in place. And we know that even this, as we speak this morning, that's why there was a press briefing around the crime that was championed by the defense, but also our president is also going to be hosting a summit around the issues of corruption and what is being done. It tells us that this is a matter that is at the highest level of the attention from the highest authority, to make sure that we move from these areas and we focus more on what makes us great as a country. If you look at the list of what is going right with South Africa and you juxtapose it with the list of what is going wrong in South Africa, the list of what is going wrong with South Africa does not even reach 10. But the list of what is going right with South Africa goes all the way to the 20s, 30s, because there is so much of a good story to tell in terms of enablers. And our role is to make sure that our stakeholders, they rally with us on this journey and serve the nation by living the brand, amplifying a positive story of the nation brand. So this is just a synopsis. It's not an exhaustive list, but we chose science and technology, your favorable business climate. Those are the things that we need to continue as they are being challenged. We need to talk about the stock exchange that is in the top 20 worldwide. We need to talk about the fact that we are the largest producer of chrome and the largest producers of palladium. All those nice stories we have to leverage on our people and their tenacity and relentless attitude when it comes to winning and showing that we are a country that inspires new ways. So the creative arts, our sporting prowess, the tourism industry are those things that we do well, and we need to excel, whether it's through the Ndlovu Choir, whether it's through the Black Coffees of this world, the Shiraz, the Rons. There are so many South Africans that are inspiring new and different ways and flying the flag. And as Brand South Africa, our role is to ensure that we leverage on the story. We also leverage on the story of us as a country promoting peace and security, as we have seen in the Good Country Index, where we are rated fairly well amongst 132 economies. From a challenges perspective, it's really to show that there's a common theme. This issue around inflation currently, unemployment, the energy security. Indeed, I'm bringing it now closer to home. We started on a global front that these are not issues that are peculiar to South Africa. This is what worries generally most of the world out there. So looking at the state of the nation brand, where we now what I normally call as a marketer, the brand health check, or as they say in the FMCG, the brand thermo. What is the temperature? So we have embarked last year on a study that is done by an agency called Bloom Consulting, who have about 20 plus experience in the sphere of nation brand as they monitor different brands in the developed economies as well as in the developing economies to see how they are doing and how they are winning. With these studies, we focused and we compared South Africa against 10 markets, 4 continents, and across 5 dimensions, being export, investment, talent, tourism, and the general reputation profile of countries. Now, going into it so that we understand further what is it that we need to fix with this brand, a test was done amongst the people that are not familiar with South Africa. And what is good or rather promising for me is that even though people are not familiar and the not familiar says, I haven't really been to South Africa physically to witness myself what the country is like, but it says just based on what I've seen and I've heard, I know that this is a country that does well in sport. This is a country that does well in the entertainment and arts and scene, in the space of place and in nature, which speaks to our tourism. This is a country that has rich culture, heritage, and the people and the history. So if somebody who has not been to South Africa ranks us fairly with these numbers and say, this is what I think is going right with South Africa, we also ask the question, so what do you think is going wrong then with South Africa? Or what do you associate it to be the negative drivers? And these people then, they said, no, we believe that public governance is an area of improvement, which is why you see the spider web moving towards in. The spider web, the more it goes towards the lower part of the circle, the inner side of the circle, it tells you that you are not doing great. We need to do more from an economy, from a business ecosystem, as well as from the safety, crime, and security, which is something that already, as I've stated, it's a global issue. Yes, now, even in South Africa, we must be seen to be doing something, and we must communicate that this is what we are doing with South Africa's challenges. Now, this picture tells you that when somebody has been to South Africa, suddenly the spider web expands. So it moves from being closer to the inner circle and it slightly expands because somebody has been to South Africa. So perceptions tend to improve when people have toured, or rather they've come to South Africa. So what does this say? Honorable members, it says we need to make sure that we entice people to come into this country so that they are able to bridge the reality, between to bridge the gap between reality as well as perception, because that is what we need to do, even as Brand South Africa, to say, yes, we good and all media says this, but actually these are the facts. Because ultimately, as we bridge that gap and it becomes smaller, we will be impacting positively on our perceptions. But it also tells us that we need to focus on the positive and build more on those while we're addressing the negatives. Now, in marketing, we profile these as, these are the reputation profile builders. The question was, when you close your eyes and you think of South Africa, what comes to mind? And just like people would close their eyes and say, when I think of Italy, I think of shoes, those Italian belts and perfumes, France, same thing, cheese and so forth, Japan with the kimono. In South Africa, we associated, these are our top of mind associations. It is the Nelson Mandela, it is the animals and the wildlife, it is beauty, safari, from a positive reputation driver. From a negative reputation driver, we see apartheid. And really this, for me, tells a pertinent story around reputation. That reputation is something that is built over time. So it's not something that just happened last weekend or last month or last year, but when it tends to repeat itself and consistently, it does shape whether you have a good reputation or you have a bad reputation. And I suppose that's why apartheid is still big as a negative. It's purely because I suppose inherently we are in 30 years of our democracy, but one has to look at that in context with the years that we were, the years of oppression, similarly with poverty and racism. So those are the things that we know now, that from a reputation profile, South Africa has a score of 65, which is made out of the positive, and 35, which is negative. And we already know those negatives and we need to deal with them. What is more insightful is the fact that this study also said, South Africa has now been defined by its challenges as being reported, I suppose, by media. We are now being defined by what is crippling us. And it's wrong, because every brand is defined by its positioning and posture. Every brand and nation is defined by its identity. But we have fallen into a trap of amplifying more of the bad news. And we as Brand South Africa are bringing us now closer, and we're saying, come back, let's focus, let's come up with this central idea, which is what this research is telling us to do. But summarizing it, we know that export, they're a great way to go. Investments, they're a great way to go to amplify. Investors perceive us as a developing or a developed country, which is great, but it also sees us as the strongest economy in the African continent. One thing I want to flag here is the trade conclusion, which says we have the strongest digital appeal and digital identity. What that means in a layman's term, it says the world seemingly, when they search and Google something about South Africa, or they want something about South Africa, they go on Google and they check and they search online more than other African countries. So that tells us that, for instance, if you look at export, it tells us we need to do more via digital platform, because currently the digital demand, people are not looking and say, what is it that I want to look about exports in South Africa? But they rather look at things such as tourism and investment. So there lies in another opportunity that says, when we do our marketing campaign, we must also address such issues and make sure we package our messages, our campaigns in a manner that's going to address all these weaknesses and the great strength story. As I spoke about the global central idea, that we need to find our hook that's going to champion and be at the foundation and be the roots of what we stand for. It's important that we do this. We have monitored the case studies in the nation branding framework, because we understand that it's difficult for an entity of 55 people to manage a country of 60 plus million of population. But if we work together with a common ideology that will take us forward, this is what the central idea is meant to do, an emotional bond between place and their audiences. It helps to build a positive, trust-based and lasting relationship, and it also inspires rational actions. Brand South Africa, since we have found this insights, we have started consulting all the flag carriers. We've consulted the business, the academia in the last week, and the GCIS has been helping to consult within the government stakeholders, so that we then, once the exercise is done, we consolidate, we find out what are the common themes and what is eventually our central idea, with the hope of articulating it next year, perhaps at the State of the Nation address, because that is a vision that would have been articulated by South Africans, including media, that this is who we are and what we stand for, and we need to rally behind it. We've seen countries such as Costa Rica that have adopted this methodology. They are doing well. Sweden, the Swedish Institute, they have adopted this notion of a project, and they're doing very well. The latest one was Estonia, which also have they've won awards recently at the City Nation Place, purely because it's easy to get the coordination of stakeholders. And I suppose they are biased in a way, because they've got a small population in relative to us as Brand South Africa. But however, if Australia can do it, and it's not far off from us, we also need to do it. It's the coordination and the re-emphasis and making sure that this positioning presentation does not only end in this portfolio committee, but we consult with all the other stakeholders to make sure that we have one common ideology and one common strategy. So looking also at the our strategy from an alignment in terms of where the agenda is as a national priority, and how are we doing, looking at the Better Africa, a Better World, and what we've been doing of late, which is good, our leadership role. There is this de facto position that always, even when we are traveling the continent, they just look up to us, the other countries, and they say the South Africa's leadership role is indeed elevated. looking at the G20 and what has happened recently with the inclusion of AU and South Africa being at the forefront in advocating for that, that's good. It's something that we all, as the custodian of the brand, can start to talk about as the reasons to believe. The BRICS and us hosting a very successful BRICS, but not only that, the expansion of it, of the BRICS bloc happened in our soil, but we need to make sure that BRICS is not something that is seen to be just an elitist type of a bloc, but it has to address our challenges of poverty, unemployment, inequality, so that the laymen on the streets also benefit from the story. So our job as Brenda says to ensure that we continue to talk about how is it that we contribute to this narrative of a better world and a better Africa. From an AU perspective, again, we've played a leadership role, and I think it was evident when we did provide, during COVID, the vaccines to the rest of the African continent. From a conflict resolutions, indeed, I think our country is not folding hands and saying, well, it's not my issue, but we've seen the roles that the active role that has been played in encouraging and promoting peaceful negotiations. But we also know that South Africa is the 15th largest contributor of troops to UN peace. And in this stat, really, it's true, this fact, because it's even substantiated by the Good Country Index, that index that looks at the role of country to solve or to contribute towards solutions on global issues. And South Africa, it's great that it's still seen in some of those dimensions within the top 20, which is a good positioning and posture. But how much of that are we all amplifying? Because I'd like to believe it's not a brand SA team only, but it's for everyone that calls himself, herself a South African and is proud to be associated with this country. So we all rally behind and we amplify these messages. From a trade relations, the strategy here is very clear. We want to note what has been done with BRICS, but our focus is to make sure that we duplicate the intra-trade amongst the BRIC bloc countries. Yes, we've noted, I've spoken out to the issue of the bloc and being expanded, but the issue and the neat thing to note is that we need to harness that and ensure that it translates to job creation and ensure that South Africa is strategically positioned to benefit and yield positive results, which will come from doubling whatever trade that we have currently amongst these countries. The same is true with the African Continental Trade Agreement, which we have been instrumental in at least unpacking, supporting what is it, contextualizing it even through our domestic program and how the entrepreneurs, the small, medium enterprises can plug into it, into these opportunities. We need to continue more of that. From an EU perspective, the EU continues to be our strongest partner. And we really, if you look at the sectors and where the investments are going in health and science and tech and energy, we need to do more of that and amplify, because these will be reasons to believe why investors must come to South Africa, because they must ask themselves, if Germany and France continues to do business, so why am I not doing business in South Africa? But it's us and how we package these messages and the narrative so that even in the North America and the Americans at large are able to continue to plow more money in South Africa and believe and grow with South Africa. So now that I've covered the environmental analysis, the state of the brand itself, the brand health check. So what does it mean? So how do we translate these insights into the marketing strategy? Firstly, I spoke about being clear about your positioning platform, being clear about your posture, so that even if circumstances that are beyond your control come, but you still stay true to who you are. And that is how you build a brand, a sustainable brand over time. So it's important that we understand the blueprint that it underpins all our marketing communications activity. And I'm happy to say that we will infuse this based on the insights of the central idea that we have been consulting. There are things that we want to add into this brand key, such as if you look under personality, there is no humor, yet the humor keeps on coming up time and again. So it is a work in progress, but as it stands, there is nothing broken with it. In fact, we use this to amplify the positive and competitive advantages, which is around our science and tech, in the aerospace, in the health sector. which speaks to the competent state financial management, which are our financial institutions. And we know that we train on the government of Singapore and business, they deploy certain their own people to come in South Africa and train, for instance, through APSA. Something that is not told, but it's something that we would like to package and have a lot of voices advocating on behalf of South Africa. I've spoken to the people, creative arts and sports. We must be very clear with the markets that we want to target, because if we are clear that this is our posture and we know that we've got the messages in pack that we want to say, then we need to also align with the government bilaterals as in the markets, as it informs the South African tourism, the TTIC markets as well. But also our research tells us which markets have low familiarity. So our strategy is basically guided in terms of markets with that, as we've defined Africa, Arab states, Americas, Commonwealth, Europe, and Asia. Strategic platforms, members of the portfolio committee, they are very important to Brand South Africa because it helps us amplify and articulate the value proposition in an integrated manner. At the helm of the South African Investment Conference, you'll find Brand South Africa facilitating interviews, driving the narrative and ensuring that we are communicating the success story of the investment conference. The same is true with UNGA in US, where we facilitate a reputation program within business and ministers to participate. Even with BRICS, we saw it, and our share of voice continuously, and the AVE, which is an added value equivalent of an advertising, it grows because it shows that that is where we play a role. And challenges sometimes is that, somebody once made an example that, Brand SA, you must be like a duck. You see a duck moving in the river, and you see, because the paddling, the legs are paddling, they're working very hard, but you can't see the rate, the speed of paddlers. So I always like to picture ourselves that we are not the ones to be right in the forefront, but the back end, the machine, the oil that keeps running. This is us behind all the strategic platforms, whether they are at Mining Indaba, whether it's State Visit, it's the JSE tomorrow. They are important in articulating the nation brand value proposition, in mobilizing Team SA, where we get the voice of business to advocate and bridge that gap between perception and reality by talking and to the points and issues relating to the business climate, for instance. But also in this platform, it enables us to empower stakeholders with nation brand performance insights, so that how South Africa pairs and compares with the rest of the other countries, they must be able to know these indices and use them as reasons to believe why investors must choose South Africa, why investors must continue to invest their money in South Africa. And they speak to issues such as the quality of life and the rule of law, because our job is a holistic building of a brand, not just to focus on one sector, be it investment or tourism, but it's also talk about the things that, the quality of life. We've got hospitals, we've got shopping malls, we've got ports, and all the good story of South Africa. So the target audiences and the key messages, who are our messengers? And the list, again, I must say it's not exhaustive, but we do work with the South African government leaders because they're very key as they inform policy and they set the scene in terms of the mood of the country. The investment promotion and tourism promotional agencies is very pertinent because we are advocating for less of fragmentation, which is what is diluting our voice, diluting our effort, and more towards integration. And this gives me joy because Brand South Africa is very instrumental in the country's investment strategy. We provided input, and today we sit in one of the steering committees to try and fix this. Again, it might not be seen out there by a whole lot of stakeholders, but it's the work that we pride ourselves to ensure that we are advocating for a cohesive and a coherent approach in promoting South Africa. SA missions abroad, they are very key in the delivery of our messages. And we work very closely with the missions to promote South Africa. In fact, for every advert and every material we create, we give it to the DECO team. Then they disseminate into embassies so that we make sure that we have one talking point. When there's a project, there's one set that speaks of messages that speaks to the investment, that speaks to our disablers. We also rely on corporate endorsement because they are very important. Word of mouth in the sphere of nation brand is very, very important. So that is what we do very well at Brand South Africa, to then lean on those. But also we work with South African multinational, which is an easy win and a low-hanging fruit. They are already branching outside of South Africa. They must carry along the brand message, the brand identity. Nando's, one of our stakeholders that we partner with, time and again, they do this very well in their markets. They've got, through their art and design, the South African identity. We are lobbying all the other ones, and we had a meeting with your telecoms, the MTNs of this world, to say to them, please be part of this brand. Let us find an approach of how do you carry the brand when you go and you branch outside. So that is our strategy in as far as the messengers. And the global South Africans, those are experts, because those are the culprits. They can either break or make you, but ours is to mobilize them in the key markets where we have large communities, because we can't be everywhere. We have a limited budget, and we develop relationships on a continuous basis. And civil society is very important. And I'm just using an example, the gift of the givers. In fact, the gift of the givers adds so much to the reputation profile of this country. That is also, if you look at the Doctors Beyond Borders and Nurses Beyond Borders, those are civil society groupings that are a low profile, but they're actually doing so much in terms of the reputation profile. And the role that we are asking them to do is that of advocacy and influence. From an audience is to be targeted, we are looking at current and prospective investors. So that all the multinational housed in South Africa, that's what we work with. That is why we continue on the sidelines to run a campaign. One time we did in 2017-18, which says CEOs knows, and it was anchored on targeting CEOs, and they were telling a very simple story why they continue to invest in South Africa. The CEOs from Total, CEOs from Toyota, and even the JSE. I mean, those were the nice sound bites that we continue to use. We also target foreign chambers because they're very important. Your JETROs of this world, the American chambers, they tell us when things are not going well that, hang on, Brenda, say there's an issue here with the visa, and our job is to quickly mobilize and check with the Home Affairs and then come up with solutions. Going forward, we are going to have roundtables that will involve DERCO, that will involve Brenda say GCIS, to make sure we deal with these issues that will improve the doing of business in South Africa. In fact, DERCO has what you call an SA Inc. roundtable, and we've spoken to them about making sure that Brenda say has a voice there, because we also get a lot of exposure and insights from other country managers, particularly in China. So from a strategy perspective, our strategy is very, very clear. It says for those countries with a low familiarity and favorability, the marketing strategy there is to penetrate and grow, with the message where we're saying, come grow with us, because we are positioning South Africa as an investment hub of the African continent. And we then profile those reasons why, because we are the strongest economy, we are stable, we've got the young population, we've got, and all those nice benefits that we say. For those countries that are fair with the country, they understand South Africa, they are aware what we do a maintenance strategy, just to make sure that, hello, we are still here, from a share of voice, from a share of visibility, so that we do not lose that. And one of the findings that we have been sort of putting in the back end is a perception around South Africa as a study destination, because people, when they Google, as I said, we use that Bloom study, the digital demand. People, what are they looking for when they search South Africa? They're in the top 5, they are looking for the study in opportunities or how to study in South Africa. So we felt it's a low-hanging fruit that we have not amplified, despite the fact that we know that in one of the rankings of the institutions of higher learning in the African continent, 7 of our own, they appear in that report and in the top positions. And only globally, yes, one of our institutions appear within the 100. If I check as at last year's report, within the 100 or 120 bracket, which is also not bad considering the universe of these institutions of learning. So our approach is simple. We need to keep to our promise. A brand is a brand because it's a promise made and a promise kept. And our promise is to always stay true to the brand promise, which is anchored around inspiration. So when you come to visit in South Africa, looking at the international promise, it must always be inspiring to come and visit. And it's good to know that there's a new advert that has been launched by the TBCSA, and that will hopefully create that ambience of inspiration. We must create an investment that is in climate that inspires people to come and do business in South Africa. And we are asking the international audience to consider the dimensions of these 4 pillars, whether it's an experience and accessibility and security. It tells you that these are the considerations, the key 3 things when you think of visiting South Africa that we need to deal with is security, accessibility, experience. From an investment and trade, we have to make sure that we talk about the security of investment, which is why it's important we have to talk about those regulatory bodies and the rule of law, because that is what puts confidence in an investor's mind who already has a bit of uncertainty. At skills, we must focus on unemployment, we must focus on the funding and the resources in terms of access. The domestic promise, it remains important. The brand is built inside out. We must create an enabling environment for South Africans and make them to rally behind the brand South Africa so that at least there is cohesiveness. It's no use to focus solely international, and when people come locally, they come and they face challenges. So our job is to try and strike the right balance between the domestic mandate and what we do through Play Your Part, where we get South Africans to contribute to a positive social change. And Play Your Part that is why it was created as a movement in 2012. Just after we also launched the NDP, because we felt that as Brand South Africa, we must be able to measure how the rest of the South Africans are contributing towards, each pillar of the NDP. That is why we have pillars such as education, entrepreneurs, etc., because they contribute indirectly to why we're even formed as an entity, which is to indirectly contribute towards job creation, social cohesion, poverty alleviation, amongst others. From a strategic platform, as I've already indicated, we want to move from investor uncertainty, which is really currently anchored around the economic challenges, the political instabilities, infrastructure, energy challenges, safety, security, and crime. But we want to move more towards the positive, the assurance, where we talk about the good story of South Africa. The messaging platform, which is important, why South Africa matters. South Africa matters because we house a long history of giant of companies that have been investing in these countries. And our job as Brand South Africa is to provide there as reasons to believe and package them in a manner that is palatable, easily understood, and very punchy and straight to the point, because that's how we are going to win with investor assurance job and boosting the confidence. We must continue to use the regulatory environment as well as the investor protection indices to assure investors. And that will come alive when we do things such as PR, when we do things such as thought leadership, the roundtables, where we then discuss these pertinent issues. But also we continue to tell a credible story to international investors and our business decision makers that South Africa is a favorable, stable environment to do investment. And we use your Netflix, for instance, and the latest newcomers to invest in South Africa, particularly in the area of high tech, because you saw how currently the profile of the reputation is driven by tourism, by weather, by good weather. But we want to move that, and we'll only move those associations so that we are seen as, innovative country, high tech, the brilliant when it comes to science and technology. That we can only move through these campaigns and through consistent messages that are going to shift us from what has built our reputation over the years to the new South Africa that will take over in the next 30 years. And it must be South Africa that is synonymous with the world and how it has progressed. So looking at application, financial regulations is just an example of how we will amplify by communicating regulatory bodies that South Africa is not a free and for all. There are regulatory bodies such as your SARS, they're very important, such as your reserve banks. We will then say, this is why we matter. We have these things in place for you. We'll do the same from illegal regulations to reiterate the rule of law. And our international campaign, as I've said, it really is around harnessing the awareness profile of the country, the image and reputation, thereby ensuring that we are seen to be an attractive investment and business destination. My
Thank
last
you.
slide, Chairperson, is that primarily we are
You.
targeting investors.
Hello.
Yes, Chairperson.
Beyond your 30 minutes.
I'm done. It's my last slide. That's it, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable members, your interaction with the presentation.
Chairperson Motapo, my gadget doesn't give me an allowance to raise my hand.
Okay, I'll start with Honorable Motapo. Any other member? Honorable McGlue, followed by Honorable Pillay, in that order. Honorable Motapo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. My greetings to you and also to the Honorable Minister Marupin Ramokgopa, MDM, and the officials. Let me start, Chairperson, by commending Brand SA for portraying an inspiring picture of South Africa. I'm really impressed. The manner in which Ms. Ntombela presented this presentation is very much inspiring. The passion, the enthusiastic nature, I'm really impressed. However, Chairperson, she did make mention of the narrative and the perceptions. My humble request and recommendation is that let the department or Brand SA intensify the communication around these perceptions and the narrative which is going around. On very key, I loved a certain slide which dealt with key challenges and so forth. Let those be addressed. Because if a perception is left unattended, it turns into a reality. So the issues of corruption, crime, perceptions on corruption, crime, and then also issue of undocumented foreign nationals and issue of high rate of unemployment. Those perceptions, if my humble submission is that let the communication be intensified regarding all these perceptions. But generally, Chairperson, also I had initially I had a comment on key messengers, but fortunately the second bullet on South African tourism agencies, because I wanted to say also the involvement of South African tourism should be critical, but that has already been addressed. But generally, I'm really impressed, very much impressed. That's my humble submission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Motapo. Honorable McGlue.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, you know, for me, every meeting that we will have with Brand SA will leave us in the dark of the future of the organization. Because to date, we still don't have clarity. Not that I'm pushing for a particular direction, but repositioning Brand SA, I think will address a number of in-house matters, and also that will influence how the institution will respond or reposition itself in branding Mzansi. I think that is of serious note. Now, I got goosebumps when the presenter said 50 people. 50 people, are we saying that Brand South Africa is nationally based? And if we are going to talk about repositioning Brand South Africa, I would bridge for an organization that is now also like tourism becoming a regional based department to do what is best for the organization, because we cannot have a brand South Africa that is in one corner on a national basis. On the contrary, its counterpart or partner is based on regions in various provinces to promote tourism. Now, I want to speak to the top countries for foreign investment. Australia has been mentioned. Australia lies number 10. It is difficult for me to locate where South Africa lies when it comes to the top countries for foreign investment. Maybe if it's possible that I can be explained. Now, attraction of investment, I think is of key for this committee, for this country as a whole. But I want to shock this committee to say that the countries that invest the most in South Africa, more than half of them is topping the list of foreign investment, which includes Netherlands, Germany, the United States, China, as well as Australia. Now, in some of the notes and minutes that I've read, and I agree that South Africa will still remain an attractive destination to tourism. We cannot deny that fact. But what we need to be told, what is brand South Africa offering? What is it offering? I want to go to Sub-Saharan Africa. I want to go to Africa. We are number 3rd on the list when it comes to the most visited tourist in 2020. Safe to say that Zimbabwe is 2 places at the bottom of us. Now, BRICS has been mentioned, AU has been mentioned, a number of developments has been mentioned. Surely that gives reason that we have to be number 1 when it comes to the most tourist destination in Africa. That gives a lot of reason to that. Morocco is actually top of this list. And when you go to have a look at the list, China retained its position, but they also have a growth, but not marginal. They grew large in terms of that. Now, if the answer is going to come where South Africa lies, I would like to know whether there was a deficit in growth in our position, even if we have stayed the same position, or whether there was some kind of a growth difference when it comes to where we actually lied when it comes to that positions. Now, we are a regional economic powerhouse. And I think, like has been said, multinationals have to consider expanding businesses to South Africa. But this is what I want to know. Maybe we need an explanation on a number of things, how we're going to strengthen the position as an attractive business investment destination. And I think the explanation that we need is whether there's incentives, what are the investment goals of brand South Africa, and in terms of long-term, short-term investment, what are we focusing at? I think that is crucial information that we need to say whether we are appealing to the international fraternity. Yes, we've been promised with the Springboks win a holiday sometime in December. Is there any tax holidays for investment? Is there any incentives? Take us to tax breaks. If we want to sell South Africa as an attraction or as an investment destination, Is there tariffs that we can reduce? Is there exemptions that we can make from certain taxes as far as all of these incentives is concerned? And can we also include grants and subsidies to support investment in with particular reference to the industries or regions as has been mentioned? So I am eager to find out what is our position and what is the strategy of lifting us from our position and even in Africa to become the number one, on top of Egypt and Morocco. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Maglu, for your contribution. Appreciate it. Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, let me join other members in firstly commending Brand South Africa for the work that is being done, and to applaud all of the initiatives. Chair, the first one is I want to make a special appeal to the Minister and to the board to ensure that the acting position of the CEO becomes permanent and that it really needs to be filled. With that, Chair, any other critical vacancies that needs to be filled, I'm making a special appeal that those vacancies be filled, and perhaps we can have a timeline and a deadline in terms of making sure this happens. Because in order for them to function optimally, you're going to have stability in the entity. And stability comes from having permanent staff, not somebody who can act and then leave, and then you're suddenly going to have to reinvent the wheel. So we want to get that stability in the entity. Chair, I just want to ask what is being done to promote more ambassadors, because it's one of the tools that Brand South Africa uses to be able to sell the brand. I'm also pleased that there's a level of collaboration with Tourism SA, DIRCO, International Relations, as well as Home Affairs. But I want to appeal that we enhance and strengthen the working relations, especially when there are serious challenges with obtaining visas, which sometimes hinder investment. And I think it's important for us to just strengthen that relationship we have between Home Affairs particularly. I also want to recommend that there's a collaboration with provincial tourism boards and MECs responsible for tourism, particularly because we want to have one messaging and one brand. So if we are filtering this down to provincial levels, we are able to have that one message that is being sent. Then, Chair, some observations. We see that the marketing strategy places less emphasis on the role of citizens as digitization and access to the internet creates a global reach through social media platforms. And the question that I have there is, how does the entity leverage partnerships with South African embassies? And what is the state of collaboration? Beyond the ambassador program, how is the entity leveraging citizens via the use of social media with a global reach? A lot of them have followings that reach the entire world. How are we tapping into that? What is the impact of the South African media, and what initiatives does Brand South Africa have to mitigate negative publicity? And then two recommendations, Chair. The entity should develop lobbying capacity for various competitions and social and economic opportunities for South Africans. And two, to develop a strategy for ordinary South Africans to help market the nation and change the negative social media content or conduct. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Maglu, for your contribution.
Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Much appreciated. May I now invite the Brand SA team for their responses, as well as the DM.
Thank you, Chairperson. DM, I'm not sure if she can hear you, but through you, if you allow me, can I please respond to some of the questions, and then through you, Chair, then hand over some to, as I said, to Ms. Thoko Modise, who's also with me in this panel. Thank you very much for that, Chairperson. Honorable Matapo, I have noted your recommendation for us to intensify communication around disablers. We are working on a reputation strategy where we are going to lean on influential voices in the political space, in civil society, in business, and with general South Africans to try and disseminate the strategy that we've put in place. Honorable Maklua, when I was referring to 55, I'm just talking about the people that are present, the warm bodies at Brand South Africa. So that is why I think there my emphasis was on the point that I need you as Honorable Maklua. I need each and every member of this committee to rally behind the brand and shaping the brand. But I do take note of the fact that perhaps there's a need to expand our branches and almost follow a model of South African tourism where they have branches in other provinces. Yeah, I do agree with that. And I think perhaps our minister can champion an exercise of that nature. But so far, in the absence of the branches, we try and penetrate those provincial meetings. For instance, South African Tourism will have a communicators forum with all their provincial communicators, and we'll have a slot where we communicate about the brand and positioning. So that is how currently we are sort of hanging on. The investment question, as I said, we are operating in a space that is quite intricate in the sense that there are so many indices that measure different dynamics. The one that I took you through today was the global reputation as informed by the digital demand, what people look for, and the digital supply, what we give out to the public. And there you saw that our reputation profile is quite good because we are ranked amongst the other solid countries, though it does not say that you are number 3 out of 10, but it gives you a nice reputable indicators of sub-dimension that we need to strengthen to elevate our positioning. Then there's an index called Best Country Index that is done by US News, where we are ranked as a business destination around 43. But if you really look at it, it's US News and it's called Best Country Index. Generally, from an investment perspective, we are ranked above 40 there. It tells you that we are there, we are visible, we just need to deal with our challenges. If you look at the EY attractiveness report, South Africa is in the top 3 of those destinations in the African continent that contribute towards FDI, and we are attracting about 26%. As per the Attractiveness Africa report in 2023. So I hope that gives you a sense of comfort that while we cannot say that it's ranking, it's 1 out of 10 as such, but it does indicate, and it's purely because in these indices that we follow, the measures are quite intricate because they would look at the business climate rather than the best place to invest best place to invest in. And Honorable Pillay, here I will answer one question and then give the other to my colleague through Chairperson. But I agree, I've answered you, we do collaborate with the tourism boards, but we need to do more of that and more frequently. And we are working with that, particularly as we work on the implementation of the country investment strategy. That's where we are able to even reach out to those investment promotions that I've said in my presentation. Promoting of more ambassadors, definitely. That is why I spoke about the split of the domestic and the international mandate. We build a brand inside out. We have to get our ambassadors to buy in, and we call them play your part ambassadors because that's what it is. It's a call to action movement. They are playing their part and are contributing towards a positive social change in their communities and the country at large. So we do work with those. We rotate them on a quarterly basis by province where we engage them on what we do. But we use social media and we use our platforms to share the content in terms of the activities that we're doing, that as they pertain to the country and as they pertain to the good story. With the rest of the questions, I'd like to hand over through you, Chair, to Ms. Thoko Modise. Thank you.
Honorable members, I'd like to address the question of the recommendation about intensifying communication, which I would very much say I agree we need to intensify communication. But there's several things we are already starting to do. For example, we do a lot of opinion editorials that respond to whatever is being said about South Africa in the media environment. And we immediately turn those around. We have what we call a rapid response team that looks at issues in the environment, and we find ways to respond. And we use voices other than Brand South Africa voices, like influential people and thought leaders who can also speak the positive narrative we want to drive. We also have a process that we've implemented in this particular year, which is engaging with media owners directly. Because sometimes we find, because a lot of the times we deal with the commercial aspect of media, where they are always selling airtime or selling airspace or advertising space, what we've picked up is that when you don't engage with the editorial side of things is when things go wrong, because you could be placing the most expensive advert on the Sunday Times, yet the cover page story is a negative story. So when we engage with them, we bring them together and we say, here's what we are really expecting from you as citizens and patriots. The story of South Africa is also a story that belongs to you as patriots. Yes, we understand that you have a role to be a mirror to society, to tell the stories about South Africa. But you also have a responsibility to tell what role you are playing in telling the positive narrative. Last year, in one of our platforms called the Nation Brand Forum, we had a media roundtable that included African media from the continent and South Africa, talking about what role we play in profiling and telling the South African story and the African story at large. What is our role as media and journalists who tell the story? If we are the ones who are driving the negative, how do we expect the rest of the world to portray these countries and this continent as a whole? As far as global South Africans are also very key for us. We are able to share some stories and content with them on our websites, and we have a global South African website specifically dedicated to South Africans living abroad, who then share their stories of their experiences, and we share stories of whatever is happening in South Africa. Yes, we target key countries where there's a large number of South Africans. For example, Australia. For example, the UK, and sometimes the US, and Canada. So we target those, and we work with embassies in a way where when we are in the market, we then engage in roundtable discussions for business purposes, and then we engage with South Africans in the market to give them a sense of comfort and remind them of home and the goodness of home, and tell them all the other things that they may not always be exposed to, that they only hear from the media. So we try and do a huge network that mixes both those, working through DECO and their embassies and their commission or high commission's office. I think we've been to East and West Africa this year alone, and we've been to sub-Saharan South Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. So there's a lot of work we're trying to do, but I agree, we need to intensify our communications even further. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe just before I go to the DM, before the minister leaves, if you are still here, Minister, any comment you want to make? You have a reach across all departments. That's your advantage. Mr. Ramhopa might have been gone. Okay, DM Mutau.
Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. We welcome all the inputs from members of the Portfolio Committee. Chair, on the issue of the vacancies of the remaining board members, we have already started the process of filling the remainder of boards members that are still outstanding. We have already started the process of registering the board with the Master of High Court. Brand SA has already started with the process of filling all the vacant positions of the staff, junior staff, including executive. I think other questions, the acting CEO has already responded to. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, for your response. Maybe just one thing from my side before we wrap up. Acting CEO, you would have spoken about the central idea, a very good concept. And I've been reading your documents and this presentation. Maybe I would have missed it. So are you able to tell us what is the central idea for the Republic of South Africa? I was looking forward to get to that point where you are saying, here is the central idea for the country. What is that?
Thank you, Chairperson. No, I am not.
And I'm not looking for a document or a thesis.
Yes.
I'm looking for a central idea that even ordinary people will connect with. What is it? I didn't get it in the presentation.
Yes, Chairperson, I'm trying to articulate myself that you wouldn't have gotten it because we are at a stage where we will now consolidate GCIS findings from consulting all government departments and our own findings. That is happening in the next 2 weeks. So which means we are likely to give you insight at the next portfolio committee. That is why the process is almost at the end.
So at this stage, the central idea does not exist. It's still
Yes.
to be.
It's being molded, yes, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to Brand SA Collective and the Deputy Minister and all the members on their contributions. I think points that have been raised, we've taken note of those very critical contributions that were made by all the members, and we'll have to follow those up, and I hope Brand SA has taken note of all of those. Thank you. That's how we conclude that item. We're now going to step off and go to our last item. Ms. Moy and Mr. Ngwepe, can we deal with our last item?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, in front of us are the minutes of the 3rd of November. I believe that members have read the minutes. I will go page by page, and members will edit where they see fit. Page 1, Chairperson, is the members' attendance. Page 2. Page 3 is the introduction. Committee deliberations. Page 4, continuation. Continuation. Page 5, Chairperson's summary. Consideration of minutes and conclusion. Thank you, Chairperson. Those are the minutes of the 3rd of November.
Thank you, Ms. Moy. Are there any corrections, honorable members? And is there a mover for the adoption of the minutes?
Chairperson.
Honorable Pillay.
Thank you, Chair. I so move for the adoption of the minutes.
Honorable Pillay moves for the adoption of the minutes. Any seconder?
Mutapo, Chair, I second, and I also commend the Secretariat for well-captured minutes. Thank you.
Honorable Mutapo, seconds and minutes are duly adopted. Thank you very much. Any other dissenting view? None. Thank you, colleagues. The time now is 11:31, and that is the adjournment of our meeting for today. Thank you. The meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Very progressive.
Thank you, Chair.
Long live the chair.
Long live.
Record